There's no such thing as a boss with a low educational background.
Kevin, the president's son, sneered at me.
That's right. You're fired.
The department head continued in a mocking tone. These are insults that I've been subjected to time and time again. Both Kevin and the department head, every time they see me, they make fun of me like it's their catchphrase. The one saying it might not feel anything, but the one being told surely doesn't take it lightly. I'm done tolerating this at such a company. I'll make them regret mocking me. Understood. Being fired is fine with me. I resign effective today. I put my plan into action. My name is Mike Anthony. I'm an employee working for a mid-sized food wholesale company called Y Foods. I'm reaching almost 25 years of service. I've crossed the age of 50. Looking back, my life so far feels like it passed in the blink of an eye. Influenced by my father, becoming a professional boxer was my dream since childhood. So, right after high school, I immediately joined a boxing gym and aimed to become a pro boxer while working part-time to make ends meet. A year after joining, I passed my first pro test with flying colors and obtained a C-class license. With the license, I could step into the professional ring. In other words, I took the first step towards my dream. From then on, while working, I dedicated myself to boxing wholeheartedly. Day after day, I did my road work without fail, pounded the sandbag relentlessly. I wanted to become stronger, to become a boxer who could make a living just by boxing. With that in mind, I struggled tirelessly, but things didn't go as planned. Winning and losing repeatedly, I eventually realized that 5 years had passed. I wanted to become a champion and bask in the spotlight. With that dream in mind, I endured rigorous training, but reality wasn't kind, and I ended up hanging up my gloves halfway through. The cause was the discovery of an eye disease. Since it was a condition that could affect my career as a boxer, I was forced to retire due to a doctor's order. Right after retirement, I lost hope for living and became reckless. I drowned myself in alcohol and led a rough life. Lost and uncertain about how to carry on, I found myself at a crossroad in life. I only have a high school diploma and was scraping by with odd jobs anyone could do. I had nothing to be proud of. My saving grace came in the form of a gym owner. Concerned about my straightforward life, he offered me a job opportunity. That's how I joined the company I work for now, Y Foods, introduced by the gym owner. Back then, the president of Y Foods, Michael Jackson, was a die-hard boxing fan and the sponsor of the gym I belonged to. Meeting him was a stroke of luck for me. He's a man passionate about supporting boxers' second careers. My job is to visit producers to source ingredients and get them on the sales channels. I lacked education and professional skills, so I had to leverage my own physical presence, tackling tasks head-on to build a track record. As I lacked professional manners, I initially faced rejection everywhere. But as I kept pushing on, people started to resonate with my dedication. I realized that successful negotiations are not about superficial talk, but about genuinely connecting with others. This approach paid off, and now I manage sales channels exceeding $500,000 a month. All these are bonds formed through heartfelt connections. Michael, the former president, always welcomed the contracts I brought in with open arms.
Mike, you're still pushing hard. Seems like your boxing days agility is still with you.
Thanks. My mind might be blank, but I've got to make a living with my legs and heart. Michael and I always shared a smile whenever we crossed paths at work. What worked out well for me was that Michael didn't place me in an existing department, but allowed me to act freely as part of his direct team. He was considerate enough to think that integrating me, with my limited professional experience, into the organization might crush me. Thanks to that, I was able to act as I pleased and achieved a lot. However, this privileged situation disappeared with the change of president. Michael, who had taken a liking to me, stepped down due to health reasons. His eldest son, John, took over as president. Unlike Michael, who had built up the food industry from scratch, John was an elite who graduated from a top-tier university. Therefore, his way of thinking was fundamentally different from Michael's. John aimed to restructure the company into a more rational organization, eliminating all inefficiencies and exceptions. While Michael used to place people flexibly beyond organizational boundaries, John completely opposed this approach. With John's reforms, my free roaming rule was lost. Then I was assigned to the sales department. Previously, as part of the president's direct team, I wasn't closely managed, but under the department head's supervision, various restrictions were imposed on me. I, who had been freely visiting producers and achieving results, now had to constantly report where, when, and what I was doing, regardless of the outcomes. It's probably expected in the professional world, but for someone inexperienced like me, it started to feel suffocating. Yet, John allowed me some freedom. He probably realized that too many constraints would negate my strengths. He then created a new division called the Third Department in Sales and appointed me as its manager. So, I didn't have such a bad impression of John's presidency. It wasn't the freedom I had under Michael, but it wasn't too dismal either. However, 3 years after John took over, a situation I'd call a disaster struck me. The head of the sales department was replaced by Steve. Steve was an extreme academic elitist. Before discussing sales performance or contribution to the company, he judged people by their education. With his high academic credentials, Steve would speak on equal terms with those of similar education and revered those with higher qualifications. On the other hand, he thoroughly looked down on those with lower education, and this bias extended to the company's hierarchy, flattering those above him more likely to rise, while harshly belittling those in lower positions. And I became the perfect target for Steve.
Hey, Mike, you don't know this. What college did you go to again? Oh, right. Just high school.
Steve ridicules me for being a high school graduate. He flaunts his knowledge and takes the upper hand when he sees I don't understand something. I think jealousy over my accomplishments played a part too. He couldn't stand that someone with far less education than him was appointed as a manager and receiving special treatment.
Hey, you used to be a boxer, right? Don't try to intimidate with your fists just because you're not smart.
I wouldn't do that. When I glared back, Steve quickly responded,
Whoa, don't look so scary. Better watch out, everyone. He's a boxer.
Steve would stir things up and ridicule me in front of other employees. I struggled to suppress the rising anger and retorted, I'm not fighting with my fists. I'm competing with my legs, and here, pointing to my head. Saying that, I placed my fist against my chest. Then Steve glared at me, lowering his voice to intimidate.
Don't get cocky. You might have been favored since the previous president. But now that I'm in charge, no more special treatment.
Until then, I had the freedom to visit any producer across the country. However, since Steve became the department head, I had to pay for all travel expenses myself unless I got his approval. For someone who built their reputation on legwork, this was a matter of survival. But this was just the beginning of the troubles. The next year, things got even worse. The president's son, Kevin, who got in through connections, was assigned to the sales department's third division that I manage. Kevin is a high-achieving elite, adored by Steve. On top of that, he holds the unmatched title of the president's son. Being an elite and the president's son, it's natural that he's considered the next president. Sensing this, Steve was all over Kevin, trying to win his favor. On the other hand, Kevin, flattered by Steve, was on cloud nine.
Kevin, you're an elite from a top-tier university. You obviously has deep insights. It's a world of difference compared to some boxing fool.
Hey, Steve, who's the boxing fool?
Steve pointed at me.
That tough guy over there, trying to compensate for his stupidity with brute force. Stay away, or stupidity might be contagious.
Steve was bad-mouthing me to Kevin, trying to instill a negative image.
But you can't get into this company if you're dumb, right?
You'd think so, but he's just a high school grad.
Steve said that smugly, and Kevin smirked.
Really? A high school grad as a manager? It's embarrassing to have a boss with just a high school diploma.
Exactly. The former president liked boxing, so he must have been a special hire. Kind of a sympathy hire, if you will. And yet, he clings to that favor, shamelessly overstaying his welcome.
Their conversation echoed through the quiet office. Steve spoke loudly, making sure I could hear, and Kevin matched his tone. Noticing my gaze, Steve smirked.
I'm really worried, you know, Kevin. You've been assigned to the same third division as a boxing idiot, without any consultation with me, the head. What on earth is the president thinking?
Clearly, Steve was displeased with Kevin's assignment to the third division. But I felt the same. I didn't want to babysit some privileged kid. Dealing with a high-flying, well-connected elite was the last thing I wanted. To me, Kevin was nothing but a curse.
Hey, Mike.
One day during lunch, as I was reading on my laptop, Steve called out rudely. His call was so rude that I approached with a scowl, and then Steve thrust his palm forward. Apparently, it was a signal to come no closer. I faced Steve with a resigned look.
Listen, Kevin is not your subordinate, all right? Don't get it twisted.
He said that snidely. Next to him, Kevin gave me a wry smile, catching my eye. I silently glared at Steve. Then, as I shifted my gaze to Kevin, Steve stepped between us.
Be careful, Kevin. This dumb boxer is quick to throw a punch.
I felt my blood boil. It wasn't just an insult to me, but to all boxers. I had never used my fists outside the ring, but I couldn't help thinking how satisfying it would be to land a solid punch on Steve's face. Such thoughts crossed my mind. Steve, thinking I wouldn't retaliate, continued to taunt me with arrogance. I knew I shouldn't take the bait, yet my fists itched to respond. But no, that would be the end of everything. I managed to suppress the rising anger and walked away. Since Kevin joined, Steve's harassment intensified daily. Travel expenses were no longer approved, and soon even self-funded trips were restricted. Furthermore, Steve proposed simultaneously lowering the purchase price from producers and raising the selling price to retailers. The plan was to buy cheap from the producers and sell high to the clients, aiming to make a hefty profit. If we do that, we'll lose all the trust we've built, I protested fiercely.
Trust. Don't make me laugh. Those farmers and clients probably think they can fool you because you're uneducated.
Steve's words fueled my anger, and I felt my temples throbbing. That's not true. Our producers take pride in their work. We must fairly evaluate and purchase their goods at a reasonable price. That's the role of a wholesaler? I countered with reason. But Steve was dismissive.
Stop talking nonsense. That's not how you make money in business. It's all about outsmarting each other. The smart exploit the foolish. The deceivers win, and the deceived lose. That's business for you.
Steve was so focused on profit that he neglected the care needed for producers and retailers. A wholesaler that exploits for greed loses trust and will eventually be ousted from the market. Steve didn't get that. Meanwhile, Kevin mocked my face-to-face meetings with producers and retailers.
Meeting in person is so outdated. Everything can be done online now. You really are from the old school. Plus, you're not the sharpest tool in the shed.
I meet with producers to taste their products firsthand and understand the effort behind their flavors. It's about grasping hands with calloused fingers, seeing the wrinkles on foreheads, and sharing smiles, things only possible through personal interaction. I communicate and ensure that the retail stores understand the value of the sourced ingredients. To achieve this, building a trust relationship through direct meetings is essential. Kevin may think everything can be done online, but I disagree. My views are in direct conflict with those of Steve and Kevin, and this further deteriorated the relationship between the two parties. Their contempt for me intensified, making it clear they wanted me out of the company. And finally, I reached my breaking point. As I was working in the office, the two of them approached as usual.
A low-educated person shouldn't be a manager, right?
Kevin said that, looking down on me.
Exactly. You're fired.
Steve continued with a mocking tone. I had endured these insults time and again. While the one saying it might not feel anything, it's unbearable for the one on the receiving end. My mind was made up, and I was ready. I was done tolerating this company. I would make them regret ever looking down on me. Is that so? Understood. I'll resign, effective today. My straightforward resignation seemed to surprise Steve and Kevin as they exchanged looks. Then, their expressions relaxed, and they burst into laughter.
So, you're quitting. Finally, we're free from a low-educated idiot.
Watching the two rejoice, I felt a sense of despair. But it wasn't for my future. It was despair for Steve, Kevin, and perhaps the future of this company. I submitted my resignation that day, and I put into motion the plan I had prepared before resigning. 3 months before resigning, I had a meeting with a contact from a company. This company operates a supermarket chain called S Market, which is part of S Holdings. S Market was the biggest client for Y Foods, and I managed most of the sales channels there. Moreover, if you include group companies, over 50% of Y Foods clients were under S Holdings. The person in charge at S Market approached me. They noticed my role as a bridge between producers and retailers and suggested that I consider changing jobs. If producers and retailers could connect directly, it would cut the intermediary margins paid to wholesale companies. Some of that saved money could then be passed back to the producers, benefiting both sides. This was S-Market's proposal. However, establishing connections with top-notch producers is no easy task. It requires keen judgment and a trustful relationship with the producers. You won't understand their growing environment, peak seasons, or whether they use pesticides excessively without visiting them in person. That's why they saw fit to target someone like me who is well-versed in these matters. I agreed with S-Market's approach and was positively considering it, waiting for the right moment. Exiting the wholesale stage would mean negotiating directly with the producers and arranging for distribution. Without careful planning and understanding, the project could falter. But I had built up trust over many years. This allowed me to prepare without much difficulty. And when everything was ready, the moment came. A month after resigning, I received a call from Steve.
Mike, what the hell have you done?
Steve's voice was furious. What happened? I knew what was going on but pretended to be unaware.
Don't play dumb. You told the farmers to stop shipments, didn't you?
He was right. After moving to S-Market, I had contacted all the farmers I dealt with and halted their shipments to Y Foods. Instead, S-Market would purchase directly from them. Is that so? That's unfortunate. But isn't that the farmer's decision? If there's someone willing to pay more, changing suppliers is just logical, right? I responded calmly, aggravating Steve further.
I'm not talking about one or two cases. It's strange that all the farmers you were in charge of stopped at once.
Steve ranted in frustration. No amount of yelling from Steve could faze me anymore. I calmly assessed the situation that was bound to happen and spoke the lines I had prepared. That's all there was to it. If I were the one calling the farmers and they agreed to it, would there be any problem with that? I asked coldly, and Steve could only groan in response. There was no issue here. The farmers I've worked with are free to decide where to supply their products. I've dealt with producers based on a relationship of trust. There's no obligation for them to supply Y Foods exclusively.
You're out for revenge. You're doing this because we made fun of you.
Maybe I'm not as smart as you or Kevin, so I wouldn't know. My casual remark fueled Steve's anger even more.
You, don't mock me. Call the farmers now and get them to ship the products, or else.
Or else? What will happen?
Or else we'll never buy from them again. Tell that to the farmers.
His arrogance was astounding. Did Steve really think he was at the top of the food chain? It's not about buying from them. It's please sell to us. He doesn't understand that. He looked down on the farmers, the very starting point of the food chain. I can pass the message, but they might just say they'll never sell to you again. My words made Steve even more agitated.
Mike, you're pretty bold, aren't you? Well, I have my ways too. There are plenty of farmers out there. Even if we don't buy directly from them, we can source products elsewhere. Your revenge means nothing to me.
Steve's extreme arrogance made my stomach turn. There was no reaching him. So someone who thinks the world revolves around him, further discussion was pointless. Does your company have farmers willing to sell to you? And remember, the retailers we contract with have strict quality standards. I said this with an implication and abruptly ended the call. Steve might say he's unbothered, but this was just a jab. I'm about to deal a decisive blow? I smirked at my silent phone. I could clearly see why Food's struggling with procurement. This was evident as the volume of food being delivered to S Market had drastically decreased. There is a purchase agreement between S Market and Y Foods, preventing unilateral termination until the contract expires. However, if Y Foods can't supply enough, the situation changes. I've been waiting for this moment. And then I'll notify Steve of the contract termination. Sales Manager Steve, right. I'm Mike, now the head of procurement at S Market. I called from my personal phone, not using the company line.
Mike, why are you at S Market?
I've changed jobs since I was fired from Y Foods. Steve's response faltered momentarily. He must be desperately trying to sort out his thoughts amid the confusion. I quickly moved to the main topic. I intend to discuss terminating our contract with your company. When would be convenient for you? Steve, flustered, interjected.
Wait, what? Why are we talking about terminating the contract all of a sudden? And why do I have to hear this from you?
I spoke calmly to the unsettled Steve. I'll explain in detail later. For now, could you just tell me when you're available? His confusion was palpable. It was understandable that Steve found it hard to grasp that I, whom they drove out for being undereducated, had moved to a client company. For Steve, this must be an unexpected scenario. But I was the one making it happen. Unable to organize his thoughts, Steve agreed to my visit. He probably couldn't refuse since I wanted to meet in person. Soon after, I headed to Y Foods. Entering the Y Foods headquarters building as an employee of S Market felt like stepping into enemy territory. It sent a shiver down my spine. Once in the conference room, after a while, Steve and Kevin appeared. Since he was there simply as the president's son, Kevin's presence here hardly mattered. But this situation was convenient for my revenge. Let's proceed with the termination of the contract. I started the meeting with handing over my business card and cutting to the chase.
Wait a second. We'll talk about that later. First, tell me why you're with S Market.
Panic was evident on Steve's face. Beside him, Kevin looked utterly perplexed, observing the unfolding events. This was a perfect opportunity to teach this novice the harsh realities of the business world. I first questioned Steve's demeanor. Steve, you were an elite with a high education, weren't you? Then, I would expect you to at least adhere to business etiquette. Calling someone from a client company you and demanding answers so rudely doesn't seem very professional, does it? Steve frowned but offered no apology. He didn't want to acknowledge me as a representative of a client company. Kevin, next to us, sported a smug smile, peering at Steve's face. Apparently, he felt no tension in this situation. Well, it seems manners and education are two different things. I mused, casting a quick glance at Steve. I then recounted my transition to S Market, how I was tormented for being undereducated, my growing doubts about Y Foods' greed, the realization that direct transactions between retailers and producers could cut costs, and how Steve repeatedly told me I was fired. I poured out all my thoughts and shared how I was scouted by S Market.
That's funny. isn't it?
Kevin interjected suddenly.
You got mad at Steve for belittling you, so you switched to a client company, and now you're cutting off the contract as payback. Hilarious.
I gave Kevin a stern look, but he just kept grinning. He didn't seem to grasp the implications of our contract termination. What a foolish rookie.
Steve, just end the contract with this company already. We can manage without them, right? Thay's S restaurant, S store, S processed foods, S dairy, plenty of other clients. Dropping one contract should be no big deal.
Frustration was evident in Steve's eyes as he glanced at Kevin.
Those are all part of the S-market conglomerate.
Steve muttered that with his shoulders slumping.
Really?
Kevin exclaimed in surprise, completely taken aback. I'm utterly speechless at his ignorance. This novice doesn't even know our company's clients properly? If S-Market pulls out, its affiliated companies will likely follow suit in terminating the contracts. That means Y Foods would lose sales channels comprising 50% of the total transaction volume.
But we can just find new ones, right? It's totally doable.
Kevin patted Steve's shoulder. Steve brushed his hand away. The gravity of the situation seemed to have finally hit Steve, leaving him without the energy to correct Kevin. So, I explained it for them. With all due respect, even if you secure new sales channels, you can't do business without products to sell. Steve gave me a puzzled look, shooting a sharp glance my way. I continued, pressing my point. Our company has directly contracted not only with the rice, vegetable, and fruit farmers previously associated with the head office, but with all the producers I was involved with. In other words, your company has lost not just the sales channels, but also the supply sources. As I spoke, Kevin's eyes darted around nervously.
That's unbelievably bad.
He finally realized the severity. Meanwhile, Steve burst out.
Mike, are you that upset about being mocked for your education?
I looked at Steve coldly. You only know how to hit others, never feeling the blow yourself. That's why you can say such terrible things without a second thought. But it's not just about being mocked for my education. I wouldn't have gone this far for that alone. What I couldn't forgive was Steve's despicable plan to exploit the producers and overcharge the retailers. Steve said, business is about deceiving each other. The smart exploit the foolish, that's business. The smart trick the foolish in business. Steve had said that, claiming that the tricksters win and the fooled lose. I couldn't stand such blatant statements. Steve, you said business is all about deception, right? So, I played the game by your rules. By cutting Y Foods out, both our company and the producers benefit. It's a win-win. Suddenly, Kevin stood up. His eyes were bloodshot. He then stormed out of the conference room. Steve was shaking slightly, looking for a chance to counter, but he was speechless. Eventually, the matter escalated beyond the sales director's level, and the president stepped in to negotiate. My explanation ends here. I concluded in the president's office, laying bare the entire saga to President John. I reported everything, including the harassment from Steve and Kevin during my time at Y Foods, and how Steve disdained producers and retailers. As my narrative unfolded, the president's expression grew stern, and he reached his limit.
Get Steve and Kevin in here now.
An irritated John demanded them to come over the intercom.
What have you done? Apologize to Mike right now.
Upon their arrival, he rebuked them. His furious demeanor was almost demonic.
I'm sorry.
Steve cowered under his intensity. Kevin looked on with a detached gaze.
Kevin, apologize too.
Why should I? It's Steve's fault, isn't it? He's the one who upset the old man.
John approached Kevin, who showed no remorse. He stood squarely before him, grabbing his collar. His right hand was clenched into a fist. I quickly moved beside John and gently grasped his wrist. Let's stop this. Fists won't solve anything. I whispered that to John. John looked deeply into my eyes and nodded slightly.
Kevin, apologize.
He commanded in a low, soft voice. Yielding to the intense pressure, Kevin apologized.
Steve, I can't believe how foolish you've been. Be prepared to take responsibility for your actions. And Kevin, I overestimated you. I'm ashamed of how you've turned out.
John sharply criticized them, but suddenly stopped, overcome by a sense of futility. Then he turned his gaze towards me.
Mike, I truly apologize. It was my mistake to have Steve in our most important sales division. I thought Kevin could become a sincere professional under a spirited businessman like you. It seems I overestimated my foolish son. I'm truly sorry.
John apologized several times. He then quietly accepted the termination, signing the document. I expect similar notices from our affiliates soon. You should be prepared. I said that, and John nodded. Then he dismissed Steve and Kevin and turned to me.
This is all my fault. I'll ensure Steve and Kevin face appropriate consequences. We'll likely suffer catastrophic damage, but we will rise again. I've learned from you about the right way to run a wholesale business.
Leaving the president's office, I saw John with a lonely smile. I wondered what punishment Steve and Kevin would face. While imagining this, a faint pain throbbed in my chest as I pictured John's face. It was reminiscent of the emotions felt after a boxing match, when exchanging handshakes with an opponent I had thoroughly defeated. Y Foods, having lost a major client, temporarily ceased operations. Many employees were forced to find new jobs, with some being accepted by S Market and S Holdings Group companies. Faced with an existential crisis, Y Foods drastically downsized to pave its way to recovery. John planned to rebuild from scratch a procurement and sales channels. Naturally, Steve was not part of these plans. He was dismissed for his actions. Kevin, being his son, wasn't abandoned but was set for rigorous retraining. Rumor has it he's now enduring the harshness of life on a tuna fishing boat, a world where academic credentials hold no sway. This might be the necessary lesson for someone like Kevin. However, it's highly doubtful he can withstand such extreme conditions. Yet, once on the fishing boat, there's no quick return. No matter how tough it gets, there's nothing to be done about it. After switching jobs to S Market, I was transferred to oversee the procurement for the entire S Group holdings. My position remains as a manager, but moving from a company under the group to overseeing the entire group division is essentially a promotion. I'm now on a special mission to source the finest ingredients, traveling across the USA. My salary has significantly increased, and I've gained the freedom to act as I please. I've come full circle, able to do the job as I used to. I confront producers directly, taking on all their hardships to procure ingredients. to deliver the treasures produced through hardship to consumers in the best possible state. That's the mission given to me.
Finally, the nuisance is gone.
One day, after being suddenly declared redundant by Manager Sanders, Supervisor Swan said that to me. I was working as a sidelined employee. My subordinates laughed at me. I just said, "It can't be helped then." My name is Robert Johnson, 45 years old. Due to some circumstances, on my cousin's recommendation, I've been working as an office clerk at this furniture manufacturer. Ever since I was a kid, I loved drawing and making things. My dad ran a construction company, and occasionally, he'd take me to the sites.
Robert, this is how homes are built.
As a kid, I'd look up at the houses and then at the ground. Lots of unused wood was piled up. I remember picking up a small piece and bringing it home. My dad laughed, asking, "What are you gonna use that for?" I love rainy days. Because on rainy days, Dad's work was off, and he'd always be making his hobby model kits. He bought me some too, and we'd enjoy building model kits together in his room. I wasn't great at school or sports, but I did love art class. I enjoyed playing video games with my classmates, but I preferred making something on my own. I'd often decline invitations to play games, saying, "I've got something to do today." Of course, by doing that, I gradually became more and more isolated. One summer vacation, I went to visit my grandmother's house, my mom's mom, and stayed there for a while. It was quite rural, with potato fields stretching out and the sunset on the horizon. My grandmother doted on me, and the dinners she made were delicious. The freshly picked vegetables from the countryside were so sweet. They could be eaten as is, without any dressing. There were mountains, and the sea was close by. I got really tan swimming in the sea. When riding the waves that crashed in, my mom laughed under a wide-brimmed hat on the sand. Tired from swimming, I'd ride back to my grandmother's house in my mom's pickup, where she had made lots of potato salad.
Robert, the potatoes from our field are delicious, aren't they?
My grandma would ask me. The potatoes, like the other vegetables, were sweet. I devoured them eagerly. The day's dish was stew, with potatoes and carrots from my grandmother's garden. The bath was wooden, and it smelled nice. After taking a bath, I'd often talk with my mom about where we wanted to go the next day, and I'd fall asleep soundly in the bedroom of our country house. There was a mountain nearby, and we decided to visit. Holding hands with my mom, we'd slowly climb the gentle slope. The chorus of cicadas, unheard in the city, could be heard. I felt the sunlight filtering through the trees and breathed in the green air. I found a red flower I had never seen before. While my mom taught me the names of the flowers, we headed to the mountaintop, where many yellow and white flowers bloomed. Eating my grandmother's homemade potato salad and omelet, we sat on a bench, feeling the quiet breeze. As I played around, I was amazed to find out insects in the countryside were 3 times bigger than those in the city. My excitement shot through the roof. My mom hates bugs, but I found myself staring at a big one for a while. Then, we slowly made our way down the mountain, swaying in the pickup truck. There were many pickups at my dad's construction site, but it was my first time riding one, so the swaying was really fun for me. Thinking back, my dad's car was quite luxurious, with hardly any shake, and that was normal for me. On the way back, The sunset over the potato field horizon again dyed everything orange. The potato fields, like a green sea, waved in the wind against the orange background, looking so beautiful. Then, I enjoyed my grandmother's dinner and drew pictures of a blue sea, green trees, and the sunset horizon on drawing paper.
Robert, you're really good at drawing.
My grandmother would praise me. As I explored the spacious countryside house, I felt something was off. I realized what it was. My grandmother's house was filled with old furniture. Everything was made of wood, and I captured the old furniture with an instant camera. The next day, I told my grandmother I'll come again, and once again spent a long time on the train. I fell asleep, but before I knew it, my mom woke me up for the transfer to the city. The view from the train slowly changed to the cityscape. The countryside sky had been a clear, beautiful blue with white clouds floating. But the city sky, despite being clear, looked gloomy. I entered my room, cleaned up the scattered wood, and drew pictures of the old-fashioned furniture from my grandmother's house. After that, I had a mountain of homework other than art to finish. I gradually completed it, but I really struggled with studying. Summer vacation ended, and I submitted my picture diary and homework. Then, the school I disliked started. In the higher grades, during a home visit, my mom was distressed because my teacher said I was falling behind in my studies, and she consulted with my dad. I had a classmate nearby, my dad's sister's son, Ken, and my dad suggested I go to a tutoring school with Ken. After tutoring, we'd go to a nearby home improvement store to buy wood glue and small nails with my allowance. I quickly finished my school homework and made miniature furniture with wood I brought from my dad's site. My room became more of a workshop than a study room. When my family went out to the mall, I'd head straight to the furniture section to look around at various furniture. I was really interested in furniture. My parents said I was a bit different, but on days without tutoring, I'd draw the furniture I remembered and make miniature furniture by myself. On rainy days, I still enjoyed making model kits with my dad. Although I worked hard at tutoring, I also got deeply into my hobbies. Several times, Ken came to my house and suggested, "Let's play games." But I told him I had other hobbies, and he entered my room.
Huh, this is the model kit I like.
Seeing Ken's eyes sparkle, I handed him the half-finished model kit, saying, "You can freely work on it," and he happily started doing so. I cut the wood into small pieces and made a miniature sofa. Ken looked at it curiously.
Robert, you're really skillful. Do you like doing this?
Yay, I like drawing and making things, but I'm not good at studying.
Oh, I haven't done my homework today either. My mom's going to scold me again.
Saying that, Ken went home to fetch his homework, and we decided to finish it together. Ken was good at studying, and he helped me with math and such. Then, after finishing our homework quickly, I started drawing the next furniture. Ken enjoyed the model kit. I experimented with changing the colors and shapes of the furniture I remembered while finishing the drawing.
Robert, you really like furniture, huh?
Yay, looking at lots of furniture makes me happy.
Well, but your drawing is really good, you know.
I've liked drawing since kindergarten.
Ken enjoyed looking at my drawings. We had many days like that, becoming good friends as we both attended tutoring. Around that time, my mom started working as an accountant at my dad's company. However, My dad would come home drunk, citing business dinners and entertainment as reasons. I would go to bed early, but I started waking up to the sounds of my parents arguing in the middle of the night. My mom worked hard during the day and took care of the household diligently, but my dad would come home late at night or even in the morning, and my mom always waited up for him, despite his bad drinking habits. If my dad had just come home and gone to bed quietly, it would have been fine, but he was so drunk he couldn't even find the sink. Watching him, my mom would guide him, often in a loud voice. "The sink is over here," and guide him when he mistakenly headed towards the balcony, while being irritated all the time. Despite hardly sleeping at night, my mom still went to work conscientiously. The arguments between my mom and dad were endless. Waking up at night, I'd distract myself by studying for tutoring and drying furniture. I often rode my bike alone to various furniture stores. I enjoyed changing the colors of the sofas I saw or imagining the tables in different shapes. Struggling to keep up with tutoring and having to finish its homework, I would go to sleep after everything quieted down. During gym class at school, I often felt sick and ended up watching from the sidelines. But my grades, except for physical education, were slowly improving. Hearing this at a parent-teacher meeting, my mom felt relieved about me, but continued to prepare dinner every night, waiting for my dad's return. Then, suddenly, my mom collapsed. I called my dad and an ambulance, accompanying my mom to the hospital. After she was hospitalized, I visited my mom the next day. Despite the tests showing nothing wrong, she was diagnosed with overexertion. I was informed about this by the doctor. My dad, being busy, didn't visit the hospital. My mom was discharged after about 3 days of treatment, but the doctor advised her to take it easy for a while. I liked shopping, so I took on the task of asking my mom what needed to be bought and would go out in the evening, trying to help as much as possible. Although my mom was somewhat frail, I learned to cook by helping her in the kitchen, gradually getting used to it. My mom took time off work, spending her days resting. She still waited for my dad every night, but he always returned late. After having dinner with my mom, I'd go to my room. I would remember the nostalgic dinners my grandmother used to make. By then, I was in 6th grade and was able to prepare meals to some extent. And soon Ken and I were about to become middle school students. We started studying Spanish at school, which was another difficult subject. But I kept going to tutoring seriously, not wanting to worry my mom. By then, my mom's days and nights had completely reversed, and she continued to take care of my dad when he came home drunk as always. My dad, usually gentle with us, would change when he drank, becoming critical towards my mom. Descending quietly to the living room in the middle of the night, I found my mom crying alone in the kitchen. Unable to say anything, I quietly went back upstairs, careful not to let my mom notice me, and went back to sleep. Occasionally, my dad would come home early and have dinner with us. When I said, "I made dinner today," my dad would praise the food with a smile. "Robert, you've always been handy since you were little." One morning in my 2nd year of middle school, I woke up to find my mom gone. A neatly arranged dining table had a piece of paper and a letter on it. The letter, written by my mom, read, "I'm tired of living this life." The other piece was a divorce form. I understood what was happening. Then, I woke my sleeping dad up.
Dad, Mom has.
My dad slowly got up and I told him about the letter from my mom on the table. After quietly drinking his coffee for a while, he was seemingly deep in thought. I had to leave for school before I had left the house. After school, I hurried home and called my grandmother's house in the countryside.
Grandma, are you okay? Is Mom there?
Robert, is that you? Hold on a moment.
After my grandmother said that, my mom came to the phone.
Robert, I'm sorry. I just got tired of arguing with your dad.
That's okay, I understand. I'll come visit you there again.
I hung up the phone quietly, but as I did, tears began to overflow. Then, I went back to my room and opened the window. The cold winter wind entered, chilling my body all at once. I still couldn't accept the reality. I went downstairs and out to do some shopping. I managed to make a simple curry and went to tutoring. I wondered in my heart if my dad would be late again that night. I ate the curry alone at the dining table. Then, I secluded myself in my room again. Ken seemed to notice that I was different than usual at tutoring, although I tried to act normal. That night, he came over to my house.
Robert, is something wrong? How's your mom feeling?
My mom will probably be okay. She went back to her parents' place.
Oh, your mom's parents' place is in the countryside, right?
Yeah, it's a beautiful place by the sea. She'll probably rest there for a while. Maybe she won't come back here.
As I said that, my voice trembled and my eyes grew warm. Ken, seeing me like this, seemed to understand the situation. Being isolated at school, my cousin Ken felt like my only friend at the time. He went to the kitchen and seemed to be looking for something. Then he made me a cup of warm tea. Without saying anything, he sat with me at the dining table for a while before leaving. I felt like I would break if I didn't keep busy, so I went to my room and focused on making a miniature chair. The next day, when I came back from school, I found a stranger, a woman, standing in the kitchen.
You must be Robert, right? I'm Kate, a home helper.
She introduced herself, handing me her business card. I realized she was a housekeeper and politely greeted her, leaving the kitchen work to her before returning to my room. My dad must have hired the helper. With less work to do at home, I quickly finished my homework and the assignments from tutoring. By then, it seemed Kate had already left. The bathroom was very clean. As I looked around the other rooms, they were neatly tidied, and the laundry was folded in a corner of the room. I wasn't keen on going to school, but encouraged by Ken, I kept up with school and tutoring. Ever since Kate came every day, I stayed in my room.
Robert, shall I clean your room?
No, I'll take care of my room myself.
I would decline her. My miniature furniture hobby was important to me, and I didn't want anyone touching it without permission. This continued into middle school, and eventually, the time for exams approached. I occasionally called my mom, who sounded much happier and was pleased to hear from me. Yet, looking at the kitchen without my mom, I couldn't help feeling lonely. Remembering how my mom used to worry about my grades, I began to study harder as rain started to fall outside. The tradition of building model kits with my dad on rainy days had stopped. Together with Ken, I focused on studying for the exams. Somehow, I managed to get into a public high school. To celebrate, my dad bought me a cell phone, and I gave my contact information to Ken and my mom. My mom had also bought a cell phone, and we kept in touch regularly. She seemed to have found a job in the countryside. After that, the emails started to fade. Ken went to a different school, and I started commuting to school alone. The station was close, so even on rainy days, walking was quick enough. The rain washed away the memories of bright, sunny days in the countryside with my mom. It made those happy times seem far away. Even so, I still liked rainy days. Compared to the blue skies at my mom's hometown, the city, even when sunny, felt increasingly gray to me. During my first year in high school, a girl in my class named Mia gave me a letter. She was popular and really cute. The letter asked if I'd like to go out with her, which surprised me. I wrote down only my cell phone number on a letter back to her. Then we started exchanging texts, and Mia and I began dating. I wasn't much for eating out, but we went to movies and shopping, and she even joined me browsing furniture stores.
Wow, Robert, you really like furniture.
Yeah, for some reason, I've always liked it since I was little. I have something I'd like you to see, so if you want, come over to my place sometime.
When I invited her, she happily agreed to come over.
Amazing. What a fancy house.
She was surprised. It was surprising to me since I hadn't been to many friends' homes. But indeed, our living room had quite a few expensive pieces of furniture, thanks to my dad's taste. However, she was even more astonished by my room, which looked more like a workshop, and was fascinated by the miniature furniture I made.
This is so cute. Did you make this, Robert?
Yeah, that's right. Do you like it? It's my hobby.
You're so talented. I'd love to have this chair.
Sure, you can have it. I'm glad you like it. I've always been into this kind of thing, even though I'm not great at studying or sports.
She smiled warmly at that. Even when we went out to see a movie, I always found myself looking at the furniture, and she started to take an interest in it too. Our conversation flowed easily after the movies.
The Western-style furniture in today's movie was really nice, wasn't it?
Did you think so too?
Feeling understood about my hobby made my heart leap. Although we didn't eat out much at first, we began enjoying various conversations over meals at diners and singing at karaoke bars. She was good at Spanish and talked about wanting a job where she could use it. I didn't really have any career dreams. I took my studies seriously in high school, even though I quit tutoring. Then I thought it'd been nice to take her to my mom's hometown. When I suggested it, we planned a trip for 3 days during the summer holiday, with her parents' permission.
Robert, you've grown so tall. It's good to see you doing well. And what a lovely young lady.
I'm Mia, currently dating Robert. Nice to meet you.
Oh my, nice to meet you too. What a charming young lady. Please, come in.
My grandmother welcomed us with a smile. I almost cried when I saw my mom, but having Mia there made it easier, especially when I was already a high school student. Like old times, my mom took us to the sea. Mia was moved by the beautiful countryside air and the blue ocean. We were too shy for swimsuits, so we just dipped our feet at the beach. She enjoyed the nostalgic potato salad my grandmother made. She was delighted by the potato fields and green mountains, and was impressed by the architecture of my grandmother's rural home. My mom took time off work for us. The next day, my mom prepared us for the possibility of rain. The weather was clear, but even so, she said to us, The weather in the mountains can change suddenly. As we walked in the mountains, Mia was surprised by the cicada sounds. But then suddenly, they stopped. Drops of rain began to fall, and my mom lent us rain gear. At that time, my mom drove us in her regular compact car, smiling as she guided us to the base of the mountain, where we got into the car parked there. Both my grandmother and mom really took care of her well, making it a fun trip.
It was really fun. I'll come again.
She said that as we left my mom's family home. On the train back, she was all excited, chatting about how nice the countryside is, making me feel good about our trip too. I had no intention of going to college, but she was about to face college entrance exams, so this was our only chance to relax for a while. Our relationship continued smoothly through the end of high school, and she went on to her dream college. My dad suggested I help out at his construction site if I wasn't planning on college. I looked for jobs after graduating high school, but as I was not great at communication, I couldn't find a good workplace and ended up working at my dad's site right away. For someone like me who's not very strong, the work on site was tough at first. A colleague who had been working since right after high school told me sternly, "Hey, just because you're the boss's son doesn't mean you can slack off," pushing me to keep up with the work. After about 3 months, I started to get the hang of it. Aside from talking to him, I didn't need much communication, just doing what I was told. Having gotten my driver's license just before graduating high school, I started driving a small truck early in the morning to pick up younger workers without licenses. I remembered the old days when my mom used to drive a similar truck, which made me nostalgic. I liked driving. My girlfriend, now in college, kept in touch as always, and we sometimes met up to watch a movie. Ken also went to a pretty well-known college. One day, a woman named Rachel, 3 years older than me, appeared at our home. After finishing work and talking with my dad, he announced, "I'm going to marry Rachel." I didn't oppose their marriage. After all, marriage is a personal choice. Thus, Kate, who had long been helping us, was transferred to another household. I couldn't bring myself to call Rachel Mom, so I just referred to her as Rachel. This new living arrangement started, but I just couldn't feel comfortable in this house anymore. The traces of my mom and dad from the old days seemed gone. When I begged my dad to let me move into the company dormitory, he agreed. I was glad since I wanted to live alone. Having cooked since I was a child, I had no trouble with cooking for myself. My girlfriend occasionally visited, enjoying the meals I cooked, and praised my cooking as we spent time together in the kitchen, making my solo living space a place where I could immerse myself in my hobbies. On my favorite rainy days, which were my days off, I would come up with various ideas, drawing new furniture designs. She always enjoyed discussing colors, saying things like, "I want furniture like this when we get married someday." Before we knew it, she graduated from college and landed a job at a multinational company she had dreamed of. I kept living my life cheerfully every day. Even though Sundays were work days for me, she would invite me out for meals on days I finished work early. And eventually, she proposed to me, leading to our marriage. The following year, we were blessed with a lovely daughter. My lonely life was then filled with a family. Since my salary was quite good and she decided to continue working, we asked my dad to help us build a custom home. We lived happily, and our daughter grew healthily from daycare to elementary school. I continued my hobby, but then Ken called me out of the blue. He had joined a fairly large furniture company and remembered my hobby.
Why not design your own furniture?
Encouraged by him, I enrolled in an online vocational school to learn computer-aided design. I improved my skills in sketching and CG. I eventually completed the designs and earned an interior designer qualification. I had been doing well at my dad's company, but one day, I slipped and fell on my way home from work, suffering a complicated fracture in one leg. The pain was unbearable. After a long surgery, I found out I wouldn't be able to walk as before. Unable to work on site with my limp, I was restless, and that was when I was 39. My daughter had entered middle school. I decided to contact Ken. Then, he mentioned that a subsidiary of his company could introduce me to an office job. I took the opportunity and joined a furniture sales company. Walking slowly and mostly capable of organizing documents on the computer, I found myself sidelined, much like a window seat employee, as I passed the age of 40. I was always being scolded by Manager Sanders.
Hey, Robert. Just stick to cleaning the office.
Understood. That was the sort of menial work I was stuck with. I was never great with communication in the first place. As such, I have apparently come off as unfriendly to others. I could hear Supervisor Swan and the other employees whispering, "Really? That guy is useless," and laughing. However, for my daughter and wife's sake, I couldn't quit my job. I was doing my best, creating documents and conducting sales on the computer behind the scenes, unbeknownst to anyone. Then, one day,
Hey, Robert. You're really slow at everything. I understand your leg is a problem, but the staff is having a hard time. You, being practically a non-contributor, are fired today.
at 45, I was suddenly laid off.
Finally, the nuisance is gone.
They laughed along. Well, I'm fired, but what happens to this company is now none of my concern. Fired her, I understand. Thank you for everything. As I packed my things and was about to leave, Director Sock, who seldom was in the office, hurriedly stopped me.
Wait a minute, Robert.
I stopped. Director Sock immediately contacted President Taylor, who then appeared.
Sanders, I had no idea our office was in such a state. Robert has a disability, yes, but did he cause any problems?
Sanders fell silent under Taylor's glare. Then Swan said,
No, but he's not good at communication. And indeed, his work is slow, and everyone is troubled by it.
I had been earnestly doing my work. I then faced Sanders and Swan to express my feelings. I am sorry. I indeed struggle with communication and have this disability. But I didn't choose to be this way. Manager, supervisor, and fellow employees, you all laughed at me behind my back. But I've been fully committed to my work. And now, the future of this company depends on what you, the manager, decide. Please apologize to me right now. I shouted loudly. Seeing the usually calm me shouting, Swan and the others were shocked.
Sanders, and all of you employees don't understand our company at all. And though you are a manager, you don't have the authority to fire an employee.
Sock said that, silencing Sanders again. Then Taylor exclaimed,
Exactly as Sock said. Our company's revenue depends on the patent designs created by Robert. Without him, this company would go bankrupt. Are you all okay with losing your jobs?
Only the president and the director were aware. I had patented all my furniture designs and outsourced their production while handling the sales here.
Patent.
Hearing Taylor's words, Sanders, Swan, and the other employees began to tremble. Taylor ordered,
Sanders, you don't have the authority to fire Robert. But I have the authority to fire you, Sanders. You are fired as of today. Clear out your desk immediately.
Sanders was fired on the spot. While still trembling, he turned pale and started packing his desk. Swan and the other employees apologized to me. Robert, we've been truly disrespectful to you, they said, apologizing one after another. Afterward, Taylor, understanding my communication struggles, called me in and gave me an office. I was appointed as the head of the department. I was shocked by my sudden promotion. I could only express my gratitude to the president. My salary was tripled. Overjoyed, I immediately texted my wife, and when I got home, my wife and daughter had bought a cake to celebrate. Though my mobility was compromised, looking at my family's smiling faces, I pledged to continue dedicating myself to my job, which blends my lifelong hobby with practical benefits. The raindrops sparkling on the window seemed to reflect my mother's smile from days gone by.
You don't need a handover since you're just a high school grad, sort of like drop out. I'll ask the elite staff, so just disappear quickly.
The department head, Will, said so, laughing condescendingly at me. Just because I'm a high school grad, do I deserve to be treated like this? I fought back the urge to shout, filled with frustration and anger. Understood. He probably didn't expect me to agree so easily. The boss looked surprised for a moment. To him, I nodded and then turned my back, saying, "If you want me gone, I'll make it happen." Thinking about what was to come, I muttered this as I left the company. The next day, while I was hanging out with Sarah, my phone buzzed with a message from the boss. "You were the one who told me to disappear, weren't you?" Ignoring that, I prioritized Sarah, and before I knew it, I had 100 missed calls. I couldn't ignore it any longer. When I answered the phone, I heard Will pleading, "Please come back now. Without you, our company will go under." I am John Legend, a 32-year-old father of one. My parents died in a car accident when I was very young. As a result, I was raised by my uncle, a man who brought me up on his own. My uncle was frail and not able to earn much.
I'm sorry, John. I really want to buy you more of what you like.
It's okay. I don't really want for much anyway.
Still, he always put me first, trying to spare me any sadness. He made sure I had well-balanced meals. While he would only have cabbage dishes, he wore tattered clothes, while ensuring I had new ones that fit as I grew. He was such a kind person.
I'll work as soon as I graduate high school. I don't really have anything I want to become.
I was always grateful to my uncle, and to repay him as soon as possible, I chose to work right after high school.
All right, if you've decided, then I won't stop you. But remember, options are limited with just a high school education.
Yeah, I know. But someone said they'd hire me.
The job I landed was at a factory that manufactured a certain product. The only place that hired me, even as a high school grad, was there, and I ended up working hard surrounded by adults. Fortunately, the people around me sympathized with my situation and offered advice not just on work, but on personal matters as well.
John, take this if you like. I made too much of this.
Wow, thank you.
Some even brought snacks, and I spent my days grateful to those around me. Then, My uncle fell. Despite his savings, my salary was quickly consumed by his medical expenses and my own living costs.
I'm really sorry.
Don't worry about it. You took me in, and that's why I've grown up. It's my way of repaying you.
Each time I visited, my uncle had a remorseful look. Frankly, I don't really have any hobbies or desires, so I wasn't particularly bothered.
You're such a sweet and good kid, John.
My uncle would say with a gentle smile. He passed away when I was 20, after his condition worsened.
Now I'm truly alone.
I thought during those days of grief, the person who supported me through that time was Amy, who would later become my wife.
It's not okay, is it? You lost your family. I'm here if you want to talk.
She reached out to me, offering heartfelt support. Thanks to Amy, I managed to look forward. It wasn't long before we naturally started dating, and thinking about marriage came easily.
Amy, will you be part of my family?
Yes, I'd love to.
A few months into dating, although I felt it might be too soon, I proposed, and Amy said yes with the biggest smile. Then we were blessed with our daughter, Sarah, and I've been living happily ever since.
John, we've got a call from that client.
Thank you. Initially, I worked on the factory floor, but now I'm in sales. Selling the products I once helped create has been incredibly rewarding. Turns out, I had a knack for sales. Many clients took a liking to me, and sometimes I even landed big contracts. I was fully committed to doing my best and contributing to the company. But not everyone was pleased with me.
Hey, drop out. Get this paperwork done by the end of today.
What? But this isn't my job.
Don't talk back with your lack of education. Just do as I say.
That was Will Smith, the department head. He always called me dropout and belittled me for my education, piling on unrelated chores or his work onto me.
John, let me handle that. You have a meeting coming up, right?
Thanks. That helps a lot. Despite Will's attitude, my colleagues support me.
It's fine. Without you, we couldn't even do our jobs.
Everyone knows my contributions and tries to protect me. But Will, who was at the branch office until recently, doesn't know them and looks down on me for my education. They tried to explain to him, but as soon as my name came up, he'd shut down the conversation, saying, "Don't talk about that dropout in front of me." Eventually, everyone gave up trying to explain to the manager and instead focused on supporting me. I just need to concentrate on my own work for now. I have a family to provide for. I've got to hustle to support the two of us. Man, I'm beat today, I muttered as I get home. And Amy, with a concerned look, said,
You've had a tough day, John. It seems hard every day.
Yeah, it's a bit. But I'm okay. I tried to sound upbeat to avoid worrying Amy, but she clearly frowned.
You always bottle things up. Don't hide it from me.
So, I vented to her about Will. After hearing me out, Amy murmured, "I've heard about that actually." Heard about what?
Rumors that the head of sales is elitist, looking down on those with less education. I never imagined it was true, let alone that you were the one being looked down on.
Amy works in the accounting department of the same company. It seems that rumors about the manager have spread to other departments. Knowing this, I couldn't help but give a wry smile.
Should I talk to the president about it?
No, I don't want to trouble you with my issues. But if things don't improve soon, I might ask for your help.
All right, but promise to talk about it soon.
Amy said, slightly annoyed, and I nodded in agreement. Just then, I felt a bump on my knee and looked down to see Sarah with a beaming smile.
Daddy, Let's play.
Yeah, sure. Feeling lighter after talking to Amy, I picked up my daughter with a smile. A few days after our conversation, I got a call from a well-known big company saying they want to do business with me, even though it's tough to land contracts with them. Really? Thank you so much. Not just me, but the whole department was thrilled. And just when we were about to get the contract signed.
Good job. I'll take it from here.
What? Incredibly, Will tried to take credit for my work. While I was still confused, he snatched the contract and headed to the client.
Will, that's not right. John was the reason we got this deal.
What are you talking about? It just so happened he was handling it when the deal came through. It wouldn't matter who went.
Everyone blamed Will like crazy, but he just shrugged it off.
I can't trust such an important task to a high school grad. You should go organize the warehouse or something.
He ordered me to do menial work and left triumphantly.
John, are you okay?
While I was sorting things in the warehouse, feeling down, Amy appeared. I wondered why she came to the warehouse. As I looked surprised, she came closer, smiling. I heard from a colleague.
Do I still need to wait and see?
She asked, looking at me intently. Her words made me hesitate. This whole situation was a real shock, and I wondered why it was always me. Yet, somewhere deep down, I might ever be accepted. I feel that way.
John, you're kind and diligent. Maybe you want to be acknowledged at work, but I'll talk about it anyway.
With that, Amy left the warehouse.
Hey, drop out. Do you have some sort of relationship with Amy from accounting?
Will, back from meeting a client and clearly irritated, asked me that. What? She's my wife. I just told him the truth, but he looked displeased for a moment.
Amy is your wife. For a nondescript dropout like you.
Amy is indeed beautiful, with her youthful appearance. I hear many men admire her, and perhaps Will is one of them.
Hey, introduce me to her.
What? Will said, smirking. His words left me dumbfounded.
I mean, introduce me to Amy.
That's impossible. I can't just introduce my own wife.
What? Don't you dare defy me, you uneducated fool.
Will glared at me. But she is the one thing I can't compromise on. So, I firmly refused. But it seems that just irritated him even more. After that, it wasn't just work he dumped on me, but he started to harass me too, breaking my personal items at my desk, spreading rumors about me. Everyone believes in me and knows Will is behind it. However, without concrete evidence, I endured the harassment for days on end.
Cut it out already.
The first to snap was surprisingly Will. Glaring at me, he shouted,
You won't introduce me to Amy, and you don't quit even with the harassment. Plus, you got all cocky with that contract win. I don't need you around.
What does that mean? Watching him rant and rave, I found myself getting calm instead. So when I asked him coldly, he declared, We don't need low-educated people in our company. You're fired. I was stunned, not expecting him to be so blunt. Will smirked at my reaction.
You, just a high school grad, sort of like drop out. Don't need a handover. I'll ask the elite employees, so just disappear quickly.
He said, laughing at me disdainfully. Do I have to be treated this way just because I'm a high school grad? I managed to suppress the urge to shout back, filled with frustration and anger. Understood. He probably didn't expect me to accept it so readily, and looked momentarily surprised. I nodded to Will, turned my back on him, and said, If you want me gone, I'll make it happen. Thinking about what was to come, I muttered this as I left the company. I contacted Amy and told her I had been fired.
Understood. I'll talk to the president. Can I ask you to pick up Sarah?
Yeah, sure. Ben, I went to pick up Sarah from kindergarten and returned home.
You've worked hard until now. Take some time to rest.
Deciding to take her advice, I chose to relax for a while. Let's play a lot tomorrow.
Yay.
Healed by my daughter's joyous reaction, I started to think about the future. Then, while playing with Sarah the next day, my phone rang with a call from Will. You were the one who said to disappear, right? Ignoring it and prioritizing Sarah, I eventually noticed I had 100 missed calls. I couldn't ignore it any longer. When I finally answered, Will's yelling came through. You finally answer. What have you been doing, John? Seeing Sarah flinch at his loud voice, I apologized to her before stepping away. There's no need to shout. I can hear you.
It doesn't matter. Without you, our flagship product won't sell.
Of course. I hold the patent for that flagship product. My words silenced Will. Ben, in a shaking voice, he muttered, No way. You're lying, right? Back when I was in the factory, I worked hard every day to create a better product. As a result, I developed a patent technology worth $500 million, recognized for my achievements. I was transferred to the main office in sales. Being the inventor, I understand the product's strengths and unique aspects, which I use to market it to clients. Currently, the company is just leasing the rights from me, I explained, causing Will to fall silent again. Since I'm the sole holder of this technology, the company can't use it if I'm fired. He seemed to realize that. Then he pleaded urgently, Please come back now. Without you, our company will go under. I answered with a smile. No, thank you. I've decided to spend the day with my daughter. With that, I hung up the phone and turned it off. Sorry for the wait, Sarah. As I called out, Sarah came running towards me with a beaming smile from the corner.
By the way, the sales department was in total panic.
Amy said with a laugh when she got home. It seems that with my absence, the product sustaining our company couldn't sell, and now they're facing hundreds of millions in losses, potentially leading to bankruptcy. She mentioned that my colleagues had been blaming Will.
To me, it's like, whatever at this point. You know.
What? Amy didn't like the sales department's attitude to begin with. They helped me, but only because of the patent technology I possessed. If they really cared, they should have talked to Will until he understood properly.
After all, they were just trying to avoid getting on his bad side themselves.
I agreed with her point. They helped me, but they never confronted Will head on. When he stole credit from me, they initially argued back, but they quickly backed down. Same with the patent issue. They were only willing to discuss it at first. They seemed to have given up quickly.
Of course, John, you're also to blame for not speaking up to the manager about something so important. You should have cooperated with others and made your point clearly.
I'm reflecting on that.
That's good. Silence isn't always kindness,
Amy said, and I nodded in agreement. I feel like I also avoided confronting Will directly, which probably led to this mess.
From now on, make sure you speak up.
Speak up.
Sarah, who had quietly approached us, imitated Amy, and we both looked at each other and laughed. The next day, when I went to work, I headed not to the sales department, but to the president's office.
You've come. I've also called him in, so please wait a moment.
Right after that, the door was knocked.
Excuse me. Oh.
Will entered the president's office with a pale face, looking surprised to see me. Ignoring Will, The president started the conversation.
I've heard about the situation. If things continue like this, our company might go bankrupt.
Hearing the president's words, Will's face turned even paler.
How do you plan to take responsibility?
It's John's fault. He tricked me.
Will stammered in panic, blaming me outright. As I internally sighed at his behavior, the president let out a deep sigh.
I've heard about you two from my daughter.
Daughter?
Amy Legend, from accounting, is my daughter.
Yes, Amy is the president's only daughter, and I married into the Legend family.
That can't be.
You should have suspected a familial relationship when there were 3 legends in the same company.
Will's shoulders slumped on the president's remarks, and he started speaking in a low voice.
I was jealous of him, able to do so much work at such a young age.
It appears he was jealous of my work capabilities despite my youth, leading to his harassment. And upon finding out I had a young and beautiful wife, he acted as he did.
He may indeed be a high school grad. However, he has contributed significantly to our company.
Yes, I suppose so.
The decision was mine alone. I told him to take paid leave, not that he was fired.
That's why I was at home yesterday. Not because I was fired. Amy spoke with the president, and I was allowed to use my paid leave.
We will consider your punishment thoroughly,
the president said to Will, who looked down. After using up my accumulated leave, I returned to the company, where my colleagues immediately apologized. We're really sorry for not being able to protect you properly. Surprised by their sudden change, I learned that Amy had stormed in, saying, "You all have a responsibility too." I smiled wryly at her typical behavior and looked around the department. Will was nowhere to be seen. Where's Will?
He's been moved to the factory.
Will was made to take responsibility for the recent events, and the president decided he should get hands-on experience in the factory. A few days later, I decided to visit the factory during a break.
I'm so sorry.
I saw him apologize repeatedly to the skilled employees. Approaching him, I called out, "Will."
John.
He looked uneasy upon seeing me. I invited him to talk during lunch break.
All right.
He nodded reluctantly at my words. Then came lunch break.
I'm sorry for my rude behavior,
Will, the former manager, said while expressing deep apologies. Apparently, he had heard about me from the skilled workers at the factory.
You wanted to help your uncle, didn't you?
Our company makes medical-related products. In fact, I spent my days in trial and error, trying to save my uncle. I'm not a doctor, and being a high school grad, I lack detailed knowledge. Yet, driven by the desire to save him, I continued to work on developing a device that could detect and remove even the smallest illness. It didn't make it in time, though. What I finished was after my uncle had passed away, a machine with an embedded camera to find pathogens, working in perfect sync with doctors to remove them. If it had been ready sooner, it might have saved my uncle. But it was too late.
Your uncle didn't make it, but my nephew was saved.
I looked at him intently. It seems Will's nephew had the same disease as my uncle. While my uncle couldn't be saved, the product I developed enabled a new treatment that saved his nephew's life.
I wanted to work for a company that could save lives, even indirectly. But somehow, I lost my way.
It seems working with the seasoned employees had changed him completely. I can't forgive what you did.
I suppose not.
Do your best here. Make your nephew proud. He nodded at my words. Later, I took over the vacant manager's seat.
How about becoming my successor?
I don't think I'm cut out to be a president. I declined the offers from my father-in-law for the presidency multiple times. If I had managed better, we wouldn't have faced such a threat of bankruptcy. So, I insisted I wasn't the right fit for president, to which the president sadly responded, "That's a pity. I was content with my role." But then an unexpected event occurred.
John, Sarah's going to have a little brother or sister.
Amy was pregnant with our second child, bringing joy not only to me, but also to the president. I need to work even harder to support my growing family. This motivated me to dedicate myself more to my work. Later, I visited the graves of my parents and uncle, reporting to them about everything, including the new baby. I'll do better to protect my precious family in my own way, to save others. As I finished speaking, I was called and turned around. There, my beloved family awaited. "All right, I'm heading out." After saying that, I head towards my family. In that moment, the wind passed through my back as if cheering me on.
You're fired. I don't need anyone who opposes me. Pack your stuff and get out of here.
I was fired by the CEO of the company I worked for because I stood up to him. Afterward, encouraged by my boss, Sarah's words, I decided to start my own business. I won't run away this time. I'll face this head on. I can't let someone who hurts our valuable employees get away with it.
Who are you exactly?
Sarah's eyes seemed slightly moist as she witnessed the determination of everyone. My name is Ethan Sawyer. I'm turning 30 this year. I joined an IT company as a fresh graduate, and it's been 6 years now. I moved from a small town to New York when I graduated from college and have been living alone. I majored in computer science in college because I was always good with computers. The company I joined was built from the ground up by Henry Wall, the CEO. Henry has made a name for himself as a shrewd CEO, and the company is well regarded within the industry. Initially, I was proud to join such a reputable company straight out of college. I was full of hope for my new life. However, reality was not so sweet. After joining, I gradually realized the company was full of forceful and unreasonable rules by Henry, which we had no choice but to follow.
Hey, you have to secure this client at all costs.
Today as well, Henry's yelling fills the room. If you argue with Henry here, I know you'll get a long scolding later. This was something I had learned over the years. I felt like the employees were being treated like slaves to Henry.
Hey, you, Ethan. You seem like you have something to say. You know what happens if you oppose me here, right?
Yes, sir. I understand. Henry glared at me sharply. I intended to speak up today, but his piercing gaze froze me in place. As a result, I ended up saying nothing. I was a top sales performer, standing out from the others. It seemed likely I would be promoted smoothly, and I was confident in that. But achieving good results in this company was far from easy. Even as a software engineer, I was pushed into sales and given quotas that were nearly impossible to meet. I often had to take work home and work through the night. If I didn't meet the quota, I would be called by Henry for training. Though we received overtime pay, the workload was intense, and everyone was exhausted. Yet, in these hellish days, there was a brief respite.
Good job. You're the top performer this month again. That's impressive.
That was Sarah, the manager, offering me a cup of coffee. Thank you. It was just luck.
That's not true. It's the result of your skills and hard work.
Being praised directly made me shy, and I looked away. Sarah was 6 years older than me. She was not only competent at her job, but also took good care of her employees, and everyone admired her. I am one of those who admire Sarah. She easily meets Henry's unreasonable demands and exceeds expectations. I managed to keep up and achieve results against Henry's challenges, but many employees eventually reach their limits. Honestly, there wasn't a day I didn't think about resigning. However, considering the clients who relied on me and Sarah, I couldn't make a decision lightly. Besides, I love my job as an engineer, and of course, my colleagues all take pride in their work. It was hard to see my juniors leave as if they had lost their sanity because of Henry.
I guess I'm just not cut out to be an engineer.
During a break, my colleague Alex asked me for advice. That's not true. I can vouch for your skills. You should have confidence. I said that sincerely. Without any deceit, Alex had high abilities and was a valuable asset as an engineer. However, his communication skills were extremely poor. When he first joined, he didn't talk to anyone and just worked on his computer, becoming isolated. As Alex's mentor, I was chosen, slowly closed the distance between us over a year, and finally, we started talking. To my surprise, I discovered his friendly side and his intense passion for work, leading us to spend nights talking about our jobs. However, Alex struggled with sales and became increasingly pale as the monthly departmental reporting meeting approached. On the day of the monthly reporting meeting, Henry was frustrated with the recent lack of sales performance. As usual, the meeting started with a long speech from Henry. He pointed out the unsatisfactory situation with a grimace. Sometimes, he would mix in tales of his past exploits or bragging, singling out someone for public reprimand based on his mood. I really hated these moments. It was no different from bullying. All I could hear were shouts, with no substance to the words. And that day, Alex was Henry's target. He was made to stand in front of everyone and was scolded for an extended period. His humanity was even denied, making it unbearable to watch. However, no one dared to speak up, because doing so could make them the next target.
Listen up. Someone gloomy like you doesn't deserve to live.
I'm sorry.
But the moment I heard these words, I found myself standing up unconsciously. I could feel my blood boiling. All eyes turned to me, but I couldn't care less. Enough is enough. There are things you should and shouldn't say. Before I knew it, the words were out of my mouth. Once I started, I couldn't stop.
What? You have a problem?
I don't think there's any need to go that far. Henry, with a fierce demeanor, turned his glare towards Sarah.
Hey, can't you control even one of your colleagues? That's your job, isn't it?
I'm sorry. It seems he got a bit too heated. It's not his true intention.
Sarah apologized to Henry on my behalf. While feeling sorry for her, I faced Henry squarely. Today, I shall try to express my opinion. More than anything, I've been on top of this company. There's no reason I shouldn't be allowed to express an opinion or two. I convinced myself internally and spoke up. With all due respect, Henry, the approach you're advocating might not be feasible in today's era.
That's just your excuse. If you target the client when they're vulnerable, it will surely lead to sales. That's how I built up this company.
I think that approach might be increasingly counterproductive nowadays. Actually, that's probably why our sales have not been doing well lately.
Wait a minute, Ethan.
Sarah worried and called out, but I continued undeterred. With compliance becoming stricter these days, maybe it wouldn't hurt to try a more conciliatory approach with our clients.
Hey, are you questioning my methods? Since when have you been so bold as to talk back like that?
Henry stood up, slamming his hands on the table. His eyebrows were furrowed, and his face turned red with anger.
You seem to be under some misunderstanding. No matter how good your work is, you're just a pawn in this company.
He sat back down with a thud, crossing his legs.
And I'm the one who moves the pieces. In other words, anyone who can follow my orders has no right to work here.
His harsh words came rapidly, and he continued,
You're fired. I don't need anyone who opposes me. Just pack your stuff and leave.
Henry glared at me. His brows furrowed deeply, making his handsome features seem even more ruthless.
Wait a minute, please.
Sarah raised her voice against Henry's firing decree.
What, Sarah? Do you have a complaint as well? Fine by me. I don't need anyone who has objections to my decisions.
It's too much to fire him on the spot.
Henry cut her off with a smirk.
This happened because of your lack of supervision. I'll be expecting a report later.
With that, he ignored me completely and started flipping through his documents. That day, I decided to leave the company, but I had no regrets. Ignoring Alex in that moment would have been truly regrettable. After completing the resignation procedures and as I was leaving the company, Sarah called out to me, and I turned around. Sarah, thank you for everything until today. As I thanked Sarah, her voice was filled with sorrow.
You didn't have to leave. I'm really sorry. As your supervisor, I failed to protect you.
This time she apologized to me. No, this is for the best. I couldn't look her in the face and left the company. As I exited the entrance, someone was waiting for me.
I'm coming with you.
Alex, with a large cardboard box in his arms, was determined. If anyone was going to be stubborn about this, I knew it would be him. You're coming with me?
Of course.
And so, we both left the company. We began working as freelance engineers. But freelancing was much harder and more unpredictable than we had imagined. We quickly realized the value of having the name of a well-known company behind us. Sometimes we earned more than we did as employees, but often much less. Living in constant fear of running out of savings was unnerving. Yet, encouraging each other and working together made our days fulfilling. 2 months after leaving our previous jobs, Sarah contacted me and we agreed to meet at a cafe. Are you off work today? Sarah shook her head.
No, I quit my job too. It's all his fault.
She said, her expression filled with disgust as she referred to Henry as him.
After you left the company, he didn't change at all. He kept treating employees like pawns, using them up and then discarding them.
Her face twisted in frustration.
I don't understand how someone like that could ever become the CEO. Someone like you should have been in that position. I thought I could just endure it, but I really started to dislike his methods. So I quit on my own accord.
Hearing her words made me realize something. I had been considering for a while. Are you working somewhere now?
I'm enjoying the unemployed life.
She said with a sigh, her tone one of resignation.
I'm not having any luck with job hunting, and all of this is Henry's fault.
Did Henry do something?
I don't have any proof, but I keep getting rejected at the application screening stage. Even when I manage to get an interview, as soon as I mention my previous company, the atmosphere turns awkward, and then there's no follow-up. Maybe he's putting pressure on them or something.
I never imagined that someone as outstanding as Sarah would find herself in such a situation. If you're interested, would you like to work with me? That said, I'm planning to start up a company now. I won't be able to offer a high salary, and it'll be a step down from what you're used to. My sudden offer clearly took Sarah aback. If you'd prefer, it could just be a temporary thing until you find something else. But I'm not trying to pressure you.
Well, really?
She looked at me quizzically, peering into my face, faced with her beauty, which could rival any magazine model's. My heart raced. This is how I decided to start my own company. I had already reached out to a few people who had left Henry's company, and they were on board with starting up a company right away. Everyone enthusiastically agreed. And so, Sarah came to work with our company. With her arrival, the previously subdued atmosphere among us was replaced with energy and vibrancy. Despite being only in her early 30s, Sarah had risen to the position of manager at Henry's company. She naturally demonstrated her skillful workmanship, quickly becoming admired among the other employees. Before she arrived, most of us had been working with a somewhat resigned attitude. But inspired by Sarah's unyielding dedication to her work, everyone gradually became motivated, and in response, our company's sales began to improve. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call her our savior. I felt like I could never face her with anything but respect. Watching her focus intently on her computer, I was lost in thought until Alex interrupted me.
You seem happy. What were you thinking about?
Nothing much. Trying to hide my smile, Alex kept grinning.
I think you and Sarah would make a great couple. It wasn't just a work relationship at the old company, was it? Seems suspicious.
What are you talking about? That's not it at all. Though I denied it, my face probably betrayed a ridiculously happy smile.
Well, but a beauty like Sarah, pairing up with a boss. That seems unlikely.
His dismissive comment was too accurate to argue with. A self-deprecating laugh made me feel even more hollow inside. Then, 3 months after starting the company, our hard work was starting to pay off, and I was beginning to feel more confident in my role as the CEO. Our sales were improving, and everything seemed to be going well, until he showed up.
Hey, bring out the gloomy boss of this company.
It was just another Monday morning when our workday began as usual. While I was leisurely checking my emails, a sudden roar like thunder reached my ears. Curious about the commotion, I hurried to the reception area where the voice had come from.
Hey, long time no see. Ethan.
To my surprise, Henry had shown up at the company unannounced.
Looks like you're doing quite well. Did you pull some strings?
His mocking tone was laced with disdain. No, it's all thanks to our employees who've been working hard.
I heard that Sarah is working here.
Yes, she is. Our recent improvement is largely thanks to her efforts. Henry raised his eyebrows and blurted out an outrageous demand.
Why did you hire her?
I happened to meet her and heard she was struggling to find re-employment, so I invited her to join us. That's all there is to it.
Fire her?
Looking into Henry's enraged eyes felt like confronting a wild beast. Trying to hide my trembling, I asked for an explanation. What do you mean?
It means exactly that. I can't stand the fact that she's working elsewhere without my consent. And you, Ethan, if you want, become a subsidiary of our company.
I'm sorry, but I have to refuse both offers. She's an important asset to us, and I want her to continue working here. Please leave. No matter what you say, we have no intention of complying.
Getting a bit too big for your boots. Fine. I have other plans. Just you wait and regret this.
Unable to contain his anger, Henry kicked a nearby trash bin and stormed out of the company like a whirlwind. But as he warned, I slowly began to regret my rash defiance. The next day, we started receiving calls from clients and partners wanting to reconsider their contracts with us. Some employees also expressed a desire to resign. Just when things were beginning to stabilize, what on earth was going on? I bravely called one of our business partners to ask for the reason. As expected, Henry had investigated companies doing business with us and pressured them to cease all dealings. He was also attempting to poach our employees. Among those who refused, some said they were nearly bribed. I was distraught, but the thought of firing Sarah or becoming a subsidiary was unthinkable. I refused to relive those hellish days. Yet, the faces of each employee came to mind, including one who had recently announced their engagement with Joy. While I was wrestling with my thoughts, Sarah stood before me, her expression determined and resolute.
This is my fault. Please let me resign. If I go back to Henry's company, this company might be saved.
But
you're the CEO. You have to put the company first.
Cutting off my protests, she rebuked me. As I was at a loss for words, the sound of several footsteps approached, and the door burst open.
Sarah, what are you saying? You can't leave. Why should you have to?
Encouraged by everyone, I faced her and said, "They're right. There's no need for you to leave. But the fact that we're in this situation is undoubtedly my responsibility as the CEO." I clenched my fist as if making a vow. I won't run away this time. We'll face this head on. We can't let someone who hurts our valuable employees get away with it.
Yeah. Let's show them what our company is made of. If we don't stand our ground now, when will we?
Inspired by my words, Alex and the other employees raised their fists in solidarity. Seeing this, Sarah's eyes seemed to moisten slightly. United as one, we visited each company that had withdrawn their dealings with us, one by one. Being turned away at the door wasn't a one-time thing. Fear of Henry's influence was so great that merely hearing our company's name would often result in apologetic rejections. Even so, everyone worked hard to get the deal back and opened up new business partners. The pressure was beyond what we could have imagined, and the damage was so severe that at one point, our survival was in jeopardy. However, everyone did their best without a single whimper. I thought about what I could do, immersing myself in system development and sales. Thanks to everyone's hard work, our revenue gradually increased, and when we reached our peak annual sales, we shared our joy hand in hand. Around this time, the system I developed became a huge hit. It caught the industry's eye, and companies continuously approached us wanting to make deals. When the company had found its footing, Sarah, staying late as she used to, brought me a cup of coffee.
To think you stood toe-to-toe with Henry. Who are you exactly?
It wasn't me alone. It was all of us working together. I was about to sip my coffee, feeling confident we had scored a significant victory over Henry. One day, as soon as I arrived at work, The reception area was unusually noisy. When I rushed over, I found Henry there. But his usual arrogant demeanor was gone. He seemed to be in a lot of trouble. Do you need something again?
Please, could you come back to us? The gap you and Sarah left was huge.
He approached me with an unprecedented level of humility.
Please, I'm begging you. Since you left, our sales have only plummeted, and we can't seem to get any work done. I've come to realize you were indispensable to us.
As I was about to refuse, Sarah appeared. From a distance, I could see Alex looking over, worried. Now, I was not the same as before. I had a place to protect, and people to protect. I braced myself to confront Henry again.
Hey, Sarah, I've been waiting for you. I was wrong. Please, come back to us.
Henry talked to Sarah.
I'll double your salary, anything. Just come back, will you?
Despite the underhanded things Henry had done, he still wielded significant power in our industry. The scale of his company and the value of the Henry name were immensely large. It seemed absurd for someone as talented as her to work in such a small company forever. I waited for Sarah's response, but she, unfazed, simply said,
I refuse your offer.
Both Henry and I were taken aback by her unexpected reply.
I appreciate your recognition, Henry, but it's not about the money.
Sarah continued with a fierce look, her quiet anger palpable.
Could you please not interfere with us any further?
I apologize for everything that's happened. So please.
Henry looked at her with pleading eyes, but perhaps realizing our firm resolve, he slumped his shoulders and left the scene. For a while, a heavy atmosphere lingered in the office until Sarah clapped her hands, dispelling it.
Let's get back to work. Boss, don't you have a meeting later? We'll be late if we don't start now. Let's all get ready.
With that, she smiled gently. Later, I heard Henry's company, unable to manage without us, plummeted in credibility and eventually went bankrupt. Henry, who had been rumored to be unscrupulous from the start, lost his position and honor completely. He seemed to have focused on making a comeback until the end, but Henry's misdeeds had become well known among peers, resulting in even banks refusing to deal with him. With the bankruptcy, we suddenly stopped seeing Henry around our company. Rumors have it that he's been working multiple part-time jobs from dawn till dusk to repay the debts left when the company folded. However, his pride as the former CEO and constant disputes with colleagues seemed to get in the way. Thus, he kept changing jobs, and now, no one knows where he is. The real victims, though, were the employees affected by the bankruptcy. Despite the collapse, the company had long been recognized as a major player, housing many talented employees. Even after Sarah left, it seems that employees who admired her stayed in touch and occasionally reached out to each other. Some of them came to us saying, "If Sarah is here, then it's good enough for us." It was just when our company was stable. It was a stroke of luck, especially since we were considering recruiting more staff due to business expansion. Unlike before, when I was constantly worried about tomorrow's finances, I've been able to manage the company with more ease. Remember when Henry barged in, demanding we return to his company? I've always wondered why you refused.
Why did I refuse? Simply put, I disliked Henry's company.
I couldn't help but smirk at Sarah's words. Well, that's true, but I've been wondering why you decided to stay with our company. It's a question I've had for a long time. Considering other companies would want someone like her, not just Henry, I was genuinely curious why she chose to stay with a small startup company we were familiar with. Because, Sarah, you're highly competent. You'd excel even in much larger companies than this one. Then, she sat down on the sofa and began to share what she had kept to herself.
When I was at the previous company, I had many grievances about the way things were done and the rules. But I couldn't speak up because I didn't know what would be done to me if I did.
She looked at me directly.
You had the courage to stand up to Henry. Although it resulted in being pushed out of the company, to me, that was admirable and made you look cooler than anyone else.
I was taken aback to learn Sarah had seen me in such a light.
After you were gone, I worked seriously, but I increasingly wondered, is this really okay?
I listened intently to Sarah's farts for the first time.
And then, right after I impulsively quit my job, you reached out to me, and I decided I'll follow this man for life.
Although I felt a bit embarrassed, knowing Sarah's true feelings brought me relief. Thanks to Sarah and every employee's hard work, our company's performance improved steadily. We even reached one of our long-term goals, making the company public. Still, I have nothing but gratitude for the employees who stuck with me from the challenging early days. And there was another significant change in me.
Boss, today I'm going to get an answer from you, okay?
Sarah peered at me with her wide eyes, as usual, asking me the same question during our work discussions.
And when will you start speaking informally with me?
That's because speaking informally feels like a high hurdle to clear. I've been dodging the question, but today I couldn't escape. Scratching my head, I tried to find a way out of this situation. Suddenly, she stood right in front of me, determined.
I want to make things clear. What do you think of me? I won't move from here until I hear your answer.
She puffed her cheeks cutely. Well, I think you're a wonderful person, well-liked and competent at your job. Truthfully, I was deeply attracted to her. She was not only competent and beautiful, but also humble. Her compassionate and diligent nature towards everyone made me gradually drawn to her. However, I thought a worthless CEO like me didn't match up to her. So, I decided to keep those feelings to myself, intending to act solely as an employee. But being pressed like this, my resolve was wavering. As if seeing right through me, she suddenly flashed a smile.
You're lying. That's not all, is it? I've noticed.
Her face beamed with happiness. I could feel my face turning bright red. When I started the company, I was desperate. I feared I would despise myself if I couldn't get it off the ground, especially after leaving Henry. Every time the company faced the brink of bankruptcy due to Henry's pressure, I regretted standing up to him. Why do I always have to go through this? I spent countless sleepless nights. Yet, there were people watching over me in my reckless endeavors. Even someone like me had people willing to follow. And I met a wonderful woman named Sarah, along with irreplaceable companions like Alex. Moving forward, I want to keep striving towards greater goals without losing sight of what's important. Sarah, would you like to go out for dinner tonight? For now, I'll start by opening up about my feelings to her, the girl blushing right in front of me.
Our family is elite. You know, high school dropouts, and the poor can just leave.
My mother-in-law, Emily, said that as she pushed my sister, Sarah, away. She judges everything based on educational background. so she's blind to Sarah's true nature. That's probably why she can be so cruel. Emily can't stand the sight of Sarah even for a second and is trying to get her out of the workplace, even though she's currently employed. Seeing this, I let slip. Then I guess Dad is fired. I had to explain the situation to a shocked Emily afterward. It wasn't something I should have said, but there's a deep reason behind it. Hearing it, Emily was stunned. She was apparently clueless all along. As I spoke, Emily grew increasingly confused. My name is Michael Kirk. I am a 38-year-old man who dreams of owning a pet. I have a wife, Linda. She came from the Smith family to marry me. She's 1 year younger at 37, and we attended the same high school. Linda also seems interested in pets, just like me. So, we were thinking about getting a dog or a cat soon. When we discussed it, our conversation went like this. Linda, do you have a preference for the type?
Not at all. I'm fine with a mixed breed, and I think adopting rescued pets is a great idea too.
We initially thought about getting one from the pet store, but then considered saving abandoned animals or pets that had been abused by their owners. Now, we're visiting several adoption events, looking for a pet that will be a good match with our family. My desire to adopt a pet probably stems from an incident in my childhood. I lived with my father, mother, sister, and a male dog, Ken, and lost many family members in a car accident. Ken saved my sister and me from the car, allowing us to live. After running to our parents, Ken was killed by the explosion of the car. Naturally, there was no saving our parents, and we could only watch and cry.
Michael, Dad, and Mom are gone. What are we going to do now?
I had to admit, I don't know either. I still regret not being able to comfort my crying sister, Sarah, back then. There was never a day as hard as when we lost those happy times in an instant. Afterward, we were taken in by our grandparents, but that event cast a dark shadow over our hearts. Despite deciding never to have pets again, I ultimately sought the warmth that was by my side in my youth and decided to have one again through adoption.
You once had your life saved by a pet dog, right? That's why you chose a job related to pets.
Yes, I want to repay the favor to other animals. Having grown up and graduated from college, I started a pet supply company and work as its CEO. What I want to achieve now is to make our next pet as happy as possible, in place of Ken, who is no longer with us. So, I work hard every day towards that goal. I drive to work, admire the beautiful scenery, walk through the company, and exchange greetings with the employees.
Good morning.
Nice weather today, isn't it?
Everyone's faces were lively and brimming with motivation. I want to be able to check on the state of my colleagues at this company anytime. That's why I pay close attention to the employees, and I'm relieved that no problems have arisen today. It's been about 20 years since I founded this company, and we've never faced major issues. I knew that smooth operations required not just a few executives, but the efforts of many regular employees. This is probably because my father, who exists in my memory, used to share the company's hardships with my mother.
The few elites tend to run wild, making it tough for the lower-level employees. Even the regular staff are essential, but they don't get that, threatening to fire them to keep them working.
All right, I got it. Don't grumble about such things in front of the kids. I'll listen to you as much as you need.
My father was quite a complainer, always seeking my mother's ear whenever something difficult arose. But having those memories probably helped me manage the company. As I reminisced, I found myself in the CEO's office. Entering the room, I took out my work tools and got down to business. There was a mountain of work, but I needed to get through it for the approximately 4,000 employees at this company. While staring at documents, I checked the designs for a new dog cage developed by the engineering department and planned meetings with major clients. I get to eat a delicious meal at a nice restaurant tonight, and I'll see Sarah for the first time in a while. I've got to be pumped up for it. Despite the workload, I brought up tonight's plan in my mind and verbalized it to motivate myself. Time flies when I'm engrossed in work. It felt like I had just arrived, but it was already noon. Shortly after, the PAR system announced it was lunchtime. It's already this time. Working nonstop can reduce efficiency, so I should take a break. I set aside the pile of documents and took out the lunchbox my wife made for me. The lunchbox, decorated with cute dog and cat sprinkles, soothed my tired heart. While finishing my meal, thinking about getting a new pet soon, I noticed an email from Linda on my phone. It was about tonight's dinner. Tonight, Linda, Mimo, Emily, and I were supposed to dine together. But it seemed Emily would be a bit late.
Mom said she might not go after all. Does she really dislike Sarah that much?
I replied with a sense of disappointment and looked away from my phone screen. Linda and I have been married for a while since we tied the knot at 20. However, I haven't had much chance to talk with her mother. One reason is that she runs a well-known advertising firm. It's been hard to ask for her time amidst her busy schedule, so we haven't had many opportunities to talk. Another reason is her emphasis on educational background. She seems to think,
I don't want to associate with people who only finished high school. They haven't learned what they should have. Being with such people might lead to rude remarks or actions.
I want to properly introduce my sister Sarah to Emily, but it's tough because of her values. Especially since Sarah only finished high school. After being bullied by many girls in school, Sarah managed to graduate from high school but couldn't proceed to college. She must have grown averse to building relationships.
Michael, I don't want to go to school anymore. I'm scared to meet people.
I had resolved to raise Sarah properly, but felt powerless when this happened. Fortunately, Sarah managed to recover after a few years, but knowing she only finished high school, Emily seems reluctant to meet her. I wish they could come together somehow, but I'm still unsure how to make it happen. Hours later, after finishing work at the company, I headed to a restaurant. Upon opening the door adorned with beautiful patterns and entering, I was greeted by a woman's voice saying, "Welcome." I casually spoke to her. "Are you working properly? You're not slacking off, right? We have important guests today."
I know that. I've put extra effort into the cooking, so make sure to enjoy and savor it.
The person who brought over the wet wipes and a glass of water to our table after we sat down was my sister, Sarah. Sarah has been working here for over a decade as an apprentice, aspiring to take over this restaurant. She fell in love with a taste of this place during her Sweet 16 party and has been honing her skills to succeed the owner. I hope you're not causing trouble for the owner.
Of course not. Once you're the company's CEO and I'm the owner here, working hard, we can easily take care of a pet or two. I have to work hard to own a pet, too.
Well, that's good to hear.
You don't believe me? Keep that up, and I'll spice up your dish with a ton of chili pepper.
Sarah and I live separately, so it's been a while since we last saw each other. Our homes are a bit far apart, so meeting up isn't easy. Making even small talk a delight. Perhaps it was because we were frolicking like that.
Are you cheating on me with her? You seem quite close.
Linda arrived late and seemed jealous. Sarah went back to the kitchen to bring us wet wipes and water, as Linda joined me at the table. She's my sister, you know that, right?
Of course, I was just teasing.
By the way, where's Emily? Linda averted her eyes, her words unclear, looking apologetically at Sarah.
It seems Dad told Mom about meeting Sarah here, and she got angry, saying she didn't want to come. I wanted to keep it a secret until we met, expecting this would happen.
I see. I expected this, but it's still disappointing. I remembered the apologetic face of a male employee I spoke with before leaving the company. In fact, I was informed by an employee that Emily wouldn't come to this place. Though I knew in advance, it was still a shock when it actually happened. Linda, having received the wet wipes and water from Sarah, continued with a shrug.
Mom's attitude is well known back home. I'm sorry, Sarah.
No, it's okay. It's a fact that I only finished high school. I knew that I would be viewed in that light.
Watching Sarah respond modestly, I felt sad. Sarah hadn't turned to delinquency or failed at studies. It was the toxic environment that kept her from school, and yet she was judged so unfairly. I wished Emily could see for herself what kind of person Sarah is. Seeing Sarah standing dejectedly, Linda put her hand on her shoulder, offering comfort.
It's okay. You're a good person, Sarah. I'm sure my mom will understand eventually.
I hope so.
The kind-hearted restaurant owner gave Sarah a break, so the three of us continued our meal. Linda texted Emily, but the reply was just, "I have plans, can't make it." As expected, Emily didn't show up in the end. A few days later, I would unexpectedly encounter Emily. It was my day off, and I was lazing at home when I realized there was no food in the fridge. With lunchtime approaching and nothing to eat, I decided to go shopping, and that's when I found a lost puppy wandering around. It wasn't on a leash, seemingly stray, covered in mud. It must have been wandering the streets for days. It was especially dirty due to the recent rain. Its paws were particularly bad, caked in mud. I couldn't just watch and was about to approach to help, but unfortunately, a car passed by, startling the dog, and it ran off with incredible speed, making it impossible for anyone to catch up. Even for a puppy, dogs are quick. In no time, it disappeared from sight. Worried, I searched the area for a while, but couldn't find the mud-covered puppy. While searching for the puppy, I somehow remembered the cat that Emily and her family take care of. Linda's family has a Maine Coon female with beautiful fur, living comfortably in an air-conditioned room, likely still enjoying a happy life. Being of pure Maine Coon lineage, I wondered if the cat would have been given such a comfortable environment if it were a mixed breed. Emily's words when introducing the cat came back to me.
Our kitty has a pedigree, a cat of good lineage. Impressive, isn't it? Different from the mixed breed dogs and cats wandering around. If we were to get another, it would have to be from a good bloodline as well.
Any mixed breed pet would probably be not allowed in her home. If one somehow got in, it might even be kicked out.
I will never allow our pet to get hurt by interacting with mixed breed animals. That's why I'm careful about friends bringing pets over. It's their fault if mixed breeds hurt each other, but I can't bear the thought of our precious pet getting caught up in that mess.
Emily would probably not even worry if she saw an injured animal, especially if it was a mixed breed. An hour later, feeling down about the puppy, I headed to the supermarket. I felt sad about the dog, but searching for it blindly wouldn't help, so I had to move on. I was surprised to run into Emily inside the store. Seeing her in a local supermarket I frequent was unexpected, as she usually avoids such common places, preferring high-end department stores according to Linda. It's been a while, Emily. I couldn't just ignore her, so I greeted her. She looked surprised to see me.
Oh, it's been a while, Michael.
I was confused by her reaction, but Emily quickly explained.
Don't get the wrong idea. I don't usually come to these kinds of supermarkets that only sell cheap goods.
Emily seemed to think shopping at a supermarket was beneath her, potentially alienating housewives trying to save money.
I was meeting an old friend and remembered their child, so I came here to buy a gift. It would be rude to meet without bringing anything, right?
I don't think that's necessary. Though having a gift is better than none, I never thought it rude to meet without one. I think that someone who gets angry if they don't receive something can't really be considered an acquaintance.
People expect it from us because we have money.
Emily wanted to avoid the subject further. Appearing anxious,
Are you still shopping here, Michael? As a CEO, you should shop somewhere more fitting for your status.
There's some truth to what you're saying, Emily, but I'm not used to luxury. I thought of the employees working at my company. Some strive for luxury, so it's natural for someone in a high position to live up to his or her income. However, my life has always been modest, heavily influenced by my grandparents, who taught me to make do with what we have, having lived through times of scarcity. This mindset makes it hard to justify changing my lifestyle, even if it might make others uncomfortable about indulging themselves. While discussing this, Emily noticed something.
Sarah works here, doesn't she?
Excuse me. Confused about how Sarah came up, I followed Emily's gaze and saw Sarah working at the cash register. Besides her work at the restaurant, she was also working here. Something I hadn't known. It seems Sarah took on more work without my knowledge.
What do you think about this, Michael? You're a CEO, and yet look at your sister.
It hit me that Emily didn't know Sarah worked at the restaurant. While she knew a fair bit about me, she had little knowledge of Sarah due to the lack of interaction. She probably never imagined that the person invited to the restaurant worked there. Given the restaurant's fame, Emily would surely be surprised to learn this.
Because she's only a high school graduate, she can't get a decent job. If this is the only work she can handle, I can only imagine the barbaric things she might say.
Hearing this, I felt anger rising within me. Sarah, visible in my line of sight, was smiling and talking to the housewives at the register. Her ability to treat each person with care showcased her bright and lively nature. I wished Emily would drop her obsession with academic credentials and see the person right in front of her.
Doing a job like cashier work so happily, doesn't she feel embarrassed?
I think any job is respectable. It's not right to talk that way. While I value jobs requiring unique skills, I don't believe other work is lesser. Every job is essential. Without someone to do it, we'd all struggle. Why can't Emily see it that way? I wanted to change her perspective, choosing my words carefully. Sure, having only a high school education might limit job opportunities, but it doesn't define someone's entire future. Don't judge a person solely by their education level. Surprised by my retort, Emily stared back at me.
That's just idealistic. Reality isn't so sweet.
It might be true, but there are people with enviable jobs who aren't happy. Isn't that reality too? If the person is happy with his or her work, shouldn't that be enough? I felt relieved that pushing Sarah into further education didn't break her. Had I forced her to conform to societal norms and something happened, I couldn't face our parents in heaven. After expressing my views, I observed Emily's reaction. She looked down momentarily, muttering discontentedly about the importance of education.
Michael, you're wrong.
Surprisingly, Emily walked towards Sarah. Feeling something amiss, I quickly followed her. Approaching Sarah at the cashier, Emily spoke in an even tone.
Because of you, Michael has become twisted. Do you realize you're a burden to your brother? How troublesome for the family.
Startled by Emily's sudden appearance, Sarah stopped working and looked utterly confused.
If it were me, I couldn't acknowledge someone like you as family. If only you weren't here, there would be no complaints about Michael and Linda being together.
Hearing this, Sarah looked shocked and started crying. Maybe she had flashbacks of the harassment from her high school days. I rushed to protect Sarah, my important family member, but it seemed I was a bit late.
I've reached my limit. I can't stand being near you for another second, so just disappear from my sight.
With that, Emily shoved the stunned Sarah, saying,
Our family is elite. You know, high school dropouts and poor people can just go away.
Arriving at the scene, I was filled with unprecedented anger. This anger was like nothing I had ever felt before. As the head of a company supporting 4,000 employees, I blurted out something I shouldn't have. Then your husband is fired. Emily looked at me, startled, and said, What? I'm the CEO of a company employing 4,000 people, including your husband. Sarah, still confused, turned her gaze to me.
I knew you were a CEO, but did you have that many employees?
Emily's focus on education probably made her overlook many things, including her husband's details. Now, with the surroundings becoming noisy, I needed to calm the situation. After the commotion, we explained the situation to the store manager, who rushed over. Sarah and I apologized, and thanks to the manager's kindness, we were allowed to talk in the employee break room. The break room had a large table and several chairs where we sat down to settle ourselves. Sarah was still working at the register as it was her shift, but it seemed the employees had just vacated this room, leaving behind scattered items on the table, like beaded dolls, snacks, and study notebooks. Facing Emily across the table, I saw her staring at me with discontent. Can't you understand why I'm angry?
I don't see why. Have I been rude to you in some way?
It seemed Emily genuinely couldn't grasp the reason for my anger. To her, judging someone based on his or her educational background might just be normal. You haven't done anything to me, but I can't overlook the way you've treated Sarah.
Why? You must also wish she wasn't your sister.
Emily looked puzzled, furrowing her brows. I couldn't recall any instance where I might have implied such a thing, always having treated Sarah with care. I've never once thought of Sarah as a burden or an inconvenience.
Even though she's just a high school dropout who can only work a cashier job.
I kept my gaze steady on Emily, standing at the doorway. It was crucial to express my feelings without looking away. Is it only a matter of pride if someone has a good pedigree, and a shame if they don't? Are children only worth something if they're smart?
That's obvious, isn't it?
I wondered if Emily thought the same of her daughter, Linda. The urge to yell back surged within me, but I managed to restrain myself, clenching my fists out of her view. I believe a person's worth isn't determined solely by their education. Sarah's value should be based on her actions and words. Can't you see her for who she is? Emily, looking confused, picked up a beaded doll from the table. She arranged the dolls to illustrate one being excluded, with the others circled around it at a distance.
People without a college diploma are all worthless, in my experience. My respected parents said so it can't be wrong.
While speaking, Emily showed a hint of sadness, flicking away the excluded doll with her finger. Perhaps Emily, having lived longer, had seen various things, possibly including some painful past. But I couldn't accept her total dismissal of Sarah. So, I revealed something I had kept hidden. Understood. So, if that's the case, it's okay for your husband, who was deemed unexceptional and got laid off, to be fired from his current job, right? Hearing this, Emily, startled, questioned me.
Earlier you mentioned something about firing. What did you mean?
Clearly, Emily was unaware of the full picture, focusing solely on educational attainment and not seeing people for who they truly are. I decided to contact her husband, Keith. After a brief phone conversation, I addressed Emily again. Please calm down and listen, Emily. Having received Keith's consent to explain, I had to delve into details. Emily sensed something serious had transpired, her expression growing tense.
Don't rush me. What happened to my husband?
He was laid off from his job a few months ago.
What?
But I hired him in my company. Keith is knowledgeable about cats and was immediately valuable as he had the skills we needed. Emily, visibly shocked, stared blankly at the fallen doll in front of her.
Why would that happen?
It started over something minor, apparently. A fight broke out after Keith was mocked by his boss about you and Linda.
The timid Keith.
I shared Emily's surprise when I first heard about it. Having met Keith a few times, he always seemed mild-mannered. Yet, it turned out he had indeed gotten into a fight.
What could have made him so angry?
I explained to Emily, who was visibly shaken, recalling the details. Linda and you are active in volunteer work, right?
Yes, we participate in fundraising and community cleanups whenever we can.
Despite our differing views, Emily showed kindness through her volunteer work for those in need and the community. But some people don't understand why you would do that.
That's unimaginable to me.
What Linda and Emily were doing was commendable, yet some cite as mere hypocrisy. Keith was told by his boss that you and Linda were probably volunteering just for your own benefit, suggesting you were splurging with the donated money, which angered him. As I detailed what I knew, Emily buried her face in her hands, overwhelmed by the revelation.
It's disheartening that some see kindness and goodwill that way.
Then you understand how I feel. I also can comprehend your perspective on education. Emily looked at me, her expression changing as if she wanted to say something, but eventually remained silent.
I should leave for now. I'm not in the right state of mind to think clearly.
Understood. I nodded in agreement. I was tired too, and pushing my views wouldn't necessarily persuade Emily. Cooling off and reflecting seemed necessary for both of us. Before leaving, Emily put the displaced doll back with the others, forming a harmonious circle. Just as she was about to exit, she turned back to question me.
About what you said earlier. Are you planning to fire my husband?
I spoke out of turn. I have no intention of using my position to do such a thing, so please don't worry.
That's a relief.
With a sigh of relief, Emily left the room, looking exhausted. Days later, while working at the company, I unexpectedly got reunited with the stray puppy I had been concerned about. Keith had found it wandering nearby just a few hours earlier. He came back from a business meeting, and upon seeing it, he couldn't bear to leave it and brought it back.
I apologize for the inconvenience, but I couldn't just leave it.
I was informed by the security at the company entrance that Keith seemed troubled, and upon arrival, I saw him looking apologetic with a playful puppy at his feet. I intended to rescue it too, so don't worry. I was concerned after losing sight of it the other day, so I'm actually grateful to you.
What should we do now?
For now, we should keep it in a room until work ends. Afterward, I'll take it to the vet to check for a microchip, just in case its owner can be identified. While I doubted a stray would have a chip, I knew assumptions were dangerous. A worried owner might be looking for it, so it was important to check.
All right, I'll take responsibility and keep it in my department until then.
Thank you, please do. Back in my office, I worked diligently, preparing to take the puppy to the vet as soon as the workday ended, finishing work 30 minutes before the usual quitting time was probably a new record for me, thanks to me speeding through my tasks. In the evening, I drove the puppy, now in a cage, to the veterinary clinic. Luckily, my company deals in pet supplies, so having a cage handy turned out to be fortuitous. Upon arrival at the clinic, I talked to the puppy in the cage before getting out of the car. Just hang in there a little longer. I know it's cramped. It was then that I unexpectedly ran into Emily, who had brought her Maine Coon cat for a routine checkup.
I came for a checkup, but what about that puppy?
It was abandoned, so I brought it here to check for a microchip and get it examined.
That sounds like a lot of trouble, especially with your work.
Our conversation, devoid of direct eye contact, carried a somewhat awkward atmosphere as we entered the clinic. Despite my initial confusion, Emily's guidance helped me relay the necessary information at the reception. While waiting in the lobby, Emily spoke up again.
Your company deals with pet supplies, right? That must have come in handy.
Yes, it did. I hope it somehow makes Ken, who's now in heaven, a bit happier.
Ken, did you have a pet before?
Yes, when I was a child. As I elaborated on my past pet, Emily seemed to sniffle slightly, murmuring, "I didn't know that." We fell silent for a while, but Emily occasionally glanced at the cage with a puppy inside. Are you interested? Puppies are cute, though adult dogs have their charm too.
No, I was wondering why you pay so much attention to a mixed breed. It doesn't bring any benefit, after all.
Hearing her words, I internally sighed. I had hoped our supermarket conversation might have led her to understand my viewpoint, but it appeared not. Isn't it sad to choose who to be with based on potential gain or usefulness? Isn't it enough to be together because we like each other? I spoke softly, checking our surroundings. The waiting room had people, but none were close enough to overhear our private conversation. Keith isn't elite, and he was laid off. Aren't you going to leave him?
What are you talking about? I can't do that.
Why not? I thought you wanted to be part of an elite family.
That's...
Seeing Emily struggle for words, I felt a bit relieved. She seemed to understand. She was wrong, but couldn't admit it due to her pride.
I should just divorce my husband, right? That would be better. My decision must be correct. What's wrong with striving to be excellent if it leads to our happiness?
Emily said in a strained voice, desperately trying to convince herself. To me, she appeared vulnerable and pitiful.
People don't even notice someone like me, a high school dropout, so looking down on me seems natural. That's why I struggled, and even repeated a year to go to college and change my final level of education. My effort wasn't wrong.
Emily seemed unable to contain her emotions anymore. As she raised her voice, people around us started to look in our direction.
I'm absolutely right. The wrong ones are you people.
With that, she stormed out of the clinic. Left in her seat, her Maine Coon cat meowed sadly. I couldn't just leave Emily in such a state. Concerned, I contacted Linda and Keith to help search for her. After the puppy's examination, I would join in looking for her. After visiting various places, we finally ended up at the river bank. Keith was the first to find her. He was already comforting a sobbing Emily by the river, which was reassuring.
Emily, I'm sorry. I should have been more aware of your sadness and talked more with you. Was there something in your past? I'm also sorry for not properly conveying the incident when I got laid off.
Afterwards, it seems that Emily and Keith were left alone and talked for about an hour at that spot. I later heard that Emily once cared for an abandoned cat there, secretly looking after it until it tragically died due to some local high schoolers' mischief. Because these kids didn't advance to college and continued causing trouble at the river bank, Emily had become overly concerned with educational backgrounds. However, her talk with Keith seemed to have cleared the air.
I've been terrible to you and Sarah. I'm truly sorry.
It's my fault for not communicating properly with my wife. Please allow me to apologize as well.
Hearing this, both earnestly apologized to Sarah and me. I also shared that Sarah was an apprentice at a well-known restaurant, which, as I expected, surprised Emily. After our discussion, the fact that Linda had given them a serious talking to for causing worry made Emily and Keith laugh tiredly, looking exhausted.
It's the first time I've seen our daughter so angry.
Me too. Linda is not someone to anger, that's for sure.
We might never win against our daughter, huh?
Surprisingly, Emily and I found common ground on this matter. Eventually, things settled down, and Emily, Keith, and Linda gathered at their family home for some quality parent-child time. However, it seemed things were still challenging afterward. Apparently, due to recent events, they had become the subject of local gossip. Emily's behavior at the supermarket and the vet clinic had reached many ears.
That lady over there, I heard she fights with her husband every night. People with a nice facade seem to carry a lot of stress, which is kind of scary.
Exactly. They claim to be an elite family, but their true nature doesn't seem so impressive.
Rumors spread about them being on the brink of divorce or Emily harassing the family she married into out of spite. Linda and I kept denying these rumors, but Emily stopped us.
I'll accept this as the consequence of my actions. Don't worry about it. I plan to work hard and regain trust.
Emily appeared more relieved and had been talking more with Keith, believing they could eventually overcome this challenging situation. During this time, we started keeping a pet. Of course, it was the puppy we rescued at my company. We named him Sam, and though he was quite mischievous, making daily care challenging, watching him grow brought immense joy. You've grown so much, Sam. Keep it up.
I'm looking forward to it.
Sarah seems to be enjoying her time just like us. Although there's still much for her to learn as an apprentice, she has recently gained the trust of the restaurant owner, being entrusted with many menus. Regular customers are now coming specifically for the dishes Sarah makes, and there's anticipation for the day she'll take over the restaurant. Even so, she's taking proper rest on her days off, so it's good that she doesn't seem to be overexerting herself. Despite the various challenges we've faced, the thought of Sarah becoming fully proficient soon is quite moving. Today is a day to play in the park with Sarah, Linda, and Sam. Sam, look, here's the ball. I'm going to throw it.
Don't throw it too far, or Sam will struggle.
Wow, look at him jump.
Watching Sam, who's grown fond of Sarah, charge at her and seeing her fall to the ground covered in dirt made Linda and I burst out laughing. Although our parents and kin are not here, we have these incredibly happy moments with our new family.